Is U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, formerly known as Judge Jeanine, is she auditioning for Attorney General of the United States? And if so, should we cheer her on? I'm going to just go ahead and address that second part. The answer is yes. And I don't care what you think of Judge Jeanine, really. I'm not a huge fan. I think she's fine. She's entertaining. She seems pretty smart. She seems aggressive. Great, great, great. I don't necessarily agree with her attitude sometimes. But hey, she's as much of an entertainer as she is a district or U.S. attorney and a potential attorney general. And here's the thing. I think we have to appreciate the understanding that a lot of these roles, whether it's attorney general or secretary of war or whatever, a lot of times they're not necessarily very technical. In other words, like, does Pete Hegseth have to be some sprawling, MacArthur-esque, Patton-like military genius to be Secretary of War? No. He has to have the geniuses underneath him, and he has to make decisions. Does Pam Bondi, or in this case, Jeanine Pirro, have to be some amazing trial lawyers that can roll up their sleeves and go around collecting subpoenas and evidence and coming up with... No, they just have to be very good at managing and making decisions as it pertains to the Department of Justice. So when we say, should Attorney General Pam Bondi be replaced by Jeanine Pirro, my retort to that would be she should be replaced by anyone. Period. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not even going to qualify it. Pam Bondi has been an absolute disaster. Now, is she better than Bill Barr, who was actively and aggressively working against the not Trump campaign, well, that too, but also the Trump administration behind the scenes? You betcha. We're learning more and more about that as the days and weeks and months and years pass. So I don't think that Pam Bondi is necessarily working against the Trump administration. I think she does qualify as incompetent. There's a lot of times where I think all too often we point to incompetence when it's actually evil, right? It's not that a lot of these people are just bad at their job. They're actually good at their job, and that's the problem, right? Well, when it comes to Attorney General Pam Bondi, I think it's the opposite. I think she really is just bad at her job. I really wish we could have gotten Matt Gaetz in there. He was the first, if you don't recall, he was the first nominee for the position. Some say it was just a show nomination so that he can get out of his ethics complaint. Others say that whatever. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. It didn't happen. But again, with Jeanine Pirro, I think it makes sense. Now, all of this stems from a bunch of comments that she made about Judge James Boasberg, who basically gave Jerome Powell blanket immunity. Now, I'm going to play for you CNN's reaction to that. Yeah, because they're one of the first ones, not the first, but one of the first ones in legacy media to even float the idea of Pirro being put in to replace Pam Bondi as Attorney General. So they do deserve some kudos there. But one thing I'd like to note is that they seem to poo-poo on the idea that Boasberg was being biased and an activist judge, an activist member of the judiciary, by giving Jerome Powell, essentially saying that he saw no evidence of crime being committed. So, before we play it, that's CNN's stance, and they're playing it as if Boasberg isn't an activist judge, which he has demonstrated over and over and over again, that he may be the biggest activist judge in America. In other words, his core goal in life is to get Donald Trump. This is a man who would sacrifice everything. He would, I truly, and I'm not, this is not me being, way out there. I truly believe he would be willing to sacrifice his career, his reputation, his integrity, everything. He would throw it all away in a heartbeat if it meant that Donald Trump would serve 10 minutes in jail. That's how much of an activist this guy is. This guy is obsessed and will rule against President Trump, the Trump administration, the MAGA movement, Republicanism in general. He will rule against it 100% of the time, guaranteed. You could show him a picture. You could give him a video of Jerome Powell admitting that he lied, saying, look, I really got one over on those idiots in Congress. I flat out lied about this. And Boasberg would say, nope, I don't see any evidence that Jerome Powell lied. Because here's the thing, he clearly did. You know, you might be able to say that it's not worthy of a crime, and I would argue that that's the case. Okay, to be clear, I don't think that but we're not. The debate here isn't whether or not, you know, Boasberg isn't saying that he shouldn't go to jail at all. He's taking a step further. He's saying that the subpoenas alone aren't enforceable, because the subpoenas, which are supposed to be intended to collect evidence, he's saying that there's no evidence to justify the subpoenas which are there to collect evidence. Which is, like, I mean, the bar to achieve that from a legal perspective to justify Boasberg's case or Boasberg's decision is extremely high, and he didn't even come close. He just basically said, look, President Trump is going after me. He said some mean things on social media. Therefore, there is no evidence that Jerome Powell, who said that it was going to cost this much, but it actually cost this much higher. There's no evidence that he lied or was wrong, even except, you know, if you exclude math, right? I mean, that's basically what Boasberg is saying. He said, there's no evidence that 2 is less than 3. There's no evidence. You cannot prove to me, I'm James Boasberg, and I declare that 2 and 3 are equal. I mean, that's the mentality that he has to utilize in order to make this decision. Again, to be clear, we're not talking about the bar of guilt. We're talking about the bar of a subpoena, an evidence-gathering discussion. And he says that Jerome Powell is immune from even that. So while CNN goes and does, I'm not even going to play it. You know what? I am so, all right, fine, I'll play it. But with the understanding that I completely disagree with almost everything they're about to say, other than the notion that, yes, I do think that Jeanine Pirro was basically auditioning and continues to audition for the role of Attorney General, and I fully support that notion.
Thank you. That's all the time we have.
A combative Jeanine Pirro there, the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C., reacting to the news that a federal judge has quashed subpoenas issued against Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The federal judge essentially saying that the DOJ has not provided any evidence, zero evidence, that Chairman Powell should be suspected of a crime, saying the federal government's justifications are thin and unsubstantiated. There, Pirro calling the judge an activist, saying that he's inserted himself into the case.
Yeah, and interesting also, too, and I want to bring in Paula Reed because she's following this as well. And Paula, I know you've got key details. In the judge's ruling that we've got here, it just says there is abundant evidence, this is the judge, the subpoena's dominant, if not sole purpose, is to harass and pressure Powell, either to yield to the president or to resign and make way for a Fed chair who will. And he goes on to just say there's no evidence here. What more are you taking from what we just heard from Jeanine Pirro?
Look, overall, I think what I take away from that press conference, before we get into the particulars, is the fact that Attorney General Pam Bondi, we know, is on thin ice with the White House and with the president. And that appeared to me, based on what she said, the U.S. Attorney is a very smart lady. She knows what's in this opinion. That appeared to be an audition for the top job at the Justice Department, because we know that President Trump is very frustrated. He has expressed frustration with prosecutors at the Justice Department that they have not been able to successfully prosecute his political adversaries. So here, Pirro was attacking the federal judge for quashing 2 subpoenas that were issued as part of its criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Now, they sent 2 subpoenas. These were related to renovations at one of the Fed buildings and testimony that he gave about those renovations. She alleged that this judge was, quote, protecting Powell from the law. But the judge said, no, I'm quashing these subpoenas because you have provided, quote, zero evidence that Powell may have committed a crime. She also called the judge a, quote, activist. Now, this judge was appointed by former President Barack Obama, but the judge in this opinion accuses the U.S. Attorney's Office of using this subpoena to pressure Powell to either resign or comply with the president's desire for lower interest rates. In fact, this opinion starts with a series of social media posts by President Trump where he expresses his frustration with Powell, and even in one of the references said that he wants him out. So here, the Justice Department is expected to appeal, but all of this is happening amid these larger concerns about the weaponization of the Trump Justice Department. And here you saw her come out defiant, scolding reporters for asking some very reasonable questions. And that is the kind of prosecutor that President Trump wants to see in his Justice Department. But I will note, overall, they have not been successful. Cases against James Comey, Letitia James, at least 6 lawmakers they recently tried to charge. None of these have been successful. It's unlikely this will be successful either. But there she's showing the boss. She's at least trying.
Yeah, she said she's willing to take no guilty as a verdict. Paula, please stand by. We also have Ellie Honig, CNN senior legal analyst.
All right, so we're definitely not going to win the argument about Boasberg with legacy media saying what they're saying, and mostly because it's not even a big deal. Okay, it is what it is. It's expected, and you might say, oh, well, we shouldn't surrender to. Okay, well then what should we do? We do have an activist judiciary. That's a fact. So we take each case that we think has merit, we move it up through the system, and we have at this point we have sort of a conservative, we'll call it an originalist, semi-majority in the Supreme Court, which means that we do have an ability to make things happen. We've seen that, but we've also seen betrayal, obviously, as well, because we only have 2 reliable originalists. We have 3 unreliable, right-leaning judges who, between the 3 of them, we could argue that they were combined, not individually, but combined, that they were the biggest mistake of President Trump's first term. He should have been picking 3 people who were in the vein of Scalia, or of course Thomas or Alito, instead of Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch. They are at best, right-leaning some of the time, and I would say Barrett is pretty much dead center, right? Whereas you've got John Roberts, who they keep saying, oh, because George W. Bush put him in there, that, oh, he must be conservative. He's not even close. Okay, he sides with the left more than the right, and he always has. And lest we forget, Obamacare's continuing existence hinges on Chief Justice Roberts. Like Roberts, Obamacare is now owned by Roberts. He had the ability, he had everything that he needed in order to end Obamacare, and he did not. And that's just one of a dozen betrayals against the United States of America that Roberts has committed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. So anyway, enough with that rant. Point being is that we shouldn't dwell on, was Boasberg right? Was he wrong? Let's just let that play out. I want to talk about Pirro, though. And really, again, I'm falling under the category of really anybody, okay? Anyone who's qualified should replace Pam Bondi. And, not tooting my horn here, but I mean, the moment that she was announced, I came out and said that she's milquetoast lukewarm. And, she had one good little, I guess you could say, foray into trying to fight voter fraud in Pennsylvania in 2020. That's the extent of her, I guess you could say, her resume. I'm not talking about her qualifications. I'm talking about, is she really suited for the role of Attorney General of the United States? And again, that role does not have to be the greatest prosecutor or judge or greatest whatever. It has to be somebody who has good judgment, which Pam Bondi has demonstrated she does not have. Just look at her handling of the Epstein files. They have to have active, eagerness to get things done, which she definitely, clearly does not have. I remember, yes, I opposed her in the beginning. And then after she was confirmed and things started happening, I started voicing my opposition to things not getting done, screaming, where are the arrests? Why is nobody in jail? And people kept telling me, conservatives kept saying, these things take time. These things take time. You got to give her a chance. Okay, well, I've given her a chance. It is March 2026. How many more chances does she need? The answer to that question, and I will say this definitively, this isn't just an opinion. This is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a fact. Pam Bondi needs to be replaced. Is Judge Jeanine the right person? I don't know. You know, I don't know if she's the best person for the job, but I don't know that she's not. I don't know enough about her. I mean, to be fair, look, I never watched her. I don't think I can say with a certainty I never watched her on Fox News. I might have seen the occasional clip, but frankly, she bugged me, right? She wasn't amongst my favorite hosts at all, but who cares? That has nothing to do with this. Is she better than Pam Bondi? Yes, she would be. Is a boiled artichoke better than Pam Bondi as being Attorney General of the United States? Yes, a boiled artichoke would be, because Pam Bondi is not good. Do I think she's Bill Barr bad? No. Bill Barr was actively and aggressively against the administration. I think Pam Bondi is just incompetent. I think that she's in way over her head. I think that Jeanine Pirro may be up to the task, and at the very least, she has that pit bull mentality that would be required for somebody who's going to be a good attorney general. I'm not endorsing her. I'm not denouncing her. I'm just saying, at this point, anybody with the qualifications of a boiled artichoke would be better than Pam Bondi. If you've been paying attention to gold and silver prices, there's a good chance that you are considering buying physical precious metals, right? Makes sense. And I'm not a financial advisor, but I personally would never buy numismatics or collectibles or anything like that. They're overpriced. The prices are inflated for no apparent reason. I am a bullion fan, which is why I work with Advisor Bullion. Ira over there does a fantastic job. Just the most straightforward and honest guy I know in the business. And he's been doing it for a very long time. That's why I strongly recommend going to patriot.tv/gold, patriot.tv/gold, and working with Ira, whether you're wanting to buy gold or silver through cash purchase to put in your safe, or if you want to do a retirement rollover or transfer. Best way to do it is to go to patriot.tv/gold, talk to Ira, and he will take fantastic care of you. With California gas prices ballooning, President Trump has ordered coastal oil drilling to resume. Now, this is actually big news on two separate fronts. Number one, gas prices are ballooning, and that's an understatement. My wife actually asked me just today. She's like, "Have you gotten gas lately?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know, right?" She told me the price. I think she said $6.19 or something like that is what she paid, which is actually higher than what I paid when I got gas just a couple of days ago. So yeah, it's insane, and this will hopefully get that reversed as quickly as possible. It's hard out here in California to reduce gas prices because of all the regulations, all the taxes, all the fees, all the fines, all the everything else. And Gavin Newsom and the Democrats continue to make it harder and harder for those of us who still drive, those gas guzzlers, They want us to drive electric vehicles, which there's no infrastructure for. That's a discussion for another day. Point being is that, this will hopefully alleviate some of that. But it's also big news on the secondary front of continuing our push for energy dominance. Not just energy independence, but energy dominance. It is, California's offshore drilling represents a huge potential boost for American energy independence and energy dominance. So I understand that this is being done for the sake of gas prices that are skyrocketing due to the war in Iran. But let's face it, this is not an excuse. I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad thing, but this is a convenient way for President Trump to righteously overturn some of the regulations, and I shouldn't say overturn, but overrule the stupid regulations here and on the East Coast, especially northern East Coast, that prevent us from being even more dominant than we've already become in the first year or so under President Trump's second administration. We have this article over at is at truthbasedmedia.com titled, well, I already told you the title. I'm not going to read the article. It's not that long, but I'm just going to hit the bullet points. The executive order directs the Secretary of Energy to facilitate resumption at Sable Offshore's facilities, potentially unlocking up to 50,000 barrels of daily production. And that order, by the way, is to use the Defense Production Act. This will override California's regulations that have blocked repairs and production for various drilling sites along the coast. And this is along the coast of Southern California. A lot of this was shut down way back in 2015. And now we're finally starting to get it back up and have a valid reason to do so. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to stop it. They will sue. I'm sure they already have sued to try to stop this and pushing, oh, it's federal overreach, oh, federalism. You know, Democrats love federalism when it comes to a Republican president trying to make them do the right thing. Oh, they love federalism. When it comes to anything that the Democrats themselves want, especially a Democrat president, oh, by golly, we need to be unified as a nation. It's just so silly. And to be fair, I mean, the same is true in the other direction. Republicans tend to do the same thing when they scream, they being Democrats or Democrat presidents, when they start trying to impose national rules. It's like, oh, if we're federalists, you know, we're a constitutional republic and we need to 10th Amendment and yada, yada, yada. And I agree. But then, you know, when President Trump comes in and says, oh, we need to nationalize this and nationalize that, all of a sudden, you know, or not necessarily nationalize things, but where the federal government tries to get blue states to do the right thing, suddenly Republicans aren't too concerned about federalism. In this particular scenario, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to, you know, call me a hypocrite if you want. And call me, maybe it's because I'm out here and I get to pay $6.19 for a gallon of gasoline, and it's probably going to go up higher depending on how things go with the war. So yeah, maybe I'm being selfish, but I'm also pragmatic and understanding of the fact that Democrat-led states that oppose our energy supremacy are doing so not for the sake of the environment, not for the sake of just promoting the Green New Deal and net zero and all this other stuff. It really is an economic play. They want to have control over the economy, and the best way to do that is by eliminating our use of fossil fuels and by ignoring the huge benefits and the potential benefits of nuclear energy. Look, if you really want to go green, nuclear is the way to go. It's cheap, it's proven, it's effective, it's safe. Oh, but what about Chernobyl? What about Fukushima? What about... Yeah, those are... Look, what about the Eagles, man? You keep pushing for like this, all these wind turbines and stuff like that. What about the Eagles that are getting smacked out of the air and murdered, man? You know, where's your love for nature, man? Anyway, the hypocrisy. And it's on both sides, but it's mostly on the left. Back to the article. This addresses the vulnerabilities where California and U.S. military forces rely heavily on foreign oil due to local restrictions. The action follows a Justice Department opinion affirming presidential power to preempt state laws impeding critical energy resources. And again, this isn't just for the war efforts. This is for the effects of the war itself. I mean, gas prices are too dang high. So, yeah. I mean, we literally, my wife told me, we're not going anywhere. We're staying home. We're never leaving. Not until the war's over. Not until the gas prices are down. This is ridiculous, and she's right. Environmental groups and coastal communities view the order to be highly controversial, reviving memories of past oil spills that devastated marine ecosystems. Oh, wah. Okay, I'm not trying to be, there's nothing wrong with oil spills. I'm just saying that when I say wah, it's wah as in like your gaslighting. What are these oil drills off the shore? They're bad when it comes to certain things, especially the whales. Okay, yes, we have heard, at least on the East Coast, we have heard of whales, I guess, running into the oil wells or something. I don't even know how it works. But yeah, whales whales getting killed by these things. Okay, so maybe that's a thing, and yeah, that's unfortunate. That sucks. I'm not in favor of that. I don't like that. But we are in desperate need of taking full control. This isn't just about independence. This really is about dominance, and perhaps more importantly, this is about supremacy, and it's not just about the oil. We're entering into a phase of human existence, especially in Western society, in which the rush to get AI is based on to win. I shouldn't say get AI, to win the AI war is contingent on two things that have nothing to do with coding or anything like that. It's energy and rare earths. When we look at dominance, energy dominance, this is something that strikes directly at our ability to negotiate with China regarding the rare earths until we get to the point to where we can somehow find other partners, manufacture, get lucky, blessed, if you will, and find other proven reserves, proven areas of that we can mine ourselves for rare earths. Until that day comes, our only point of leverage is energy. So when we look at what we did in Venezuela, when we look at what's happening in Iran, there is a minor, I guess you could say, motive or reasoning behind those that actually pertain to those nations themselves. The real target in both of those moves, you can throw Panama into the mix as well as Cuba. The real play in all four of those moves is against China for various reasons. And when it comes to the first three, not Cuba, Cuba's a different situation. But with the other three, Panama, the Panama Canal, Venezuela's takeover, Iran's decimation, and trying to take over, control the Strait of Hormuz, all three of those moves are to allow us to have more control, more negotiating power, more leverage against China when it comes to oil, when it comes to energy. Because they have the leverage when it comes to rare earths. If they want oil, they have to go through us. That's the intention. That's the goal. If they want natural gas, they have to go through us. That's the intention. That's the goal. And if we want rare earths, unfortunately for now, we have to go through them. But let's at least have these talks on a level playing field, or at least a more level playing field. They'll be able. It's easier for them to find alternatives to oil than it is for us to find alternatives to rare earths. For now, that can, and Lord willing, it will change in the very near future. In the meantime, this is the scenario that we're faced with. This is what we have to deal with. So when President Trump goes out there and says, we need this oil, is it for California because of California high oil prices? Absolutely. Is that the primary goal of this? No. But he doesn't have to say that. He has a reason. He has, for lack of a better word, an excuse to impose the baby drill doctrine on California. He's taking advantage of it, and I fully support the move. Hey, folks, it's time to talk about something that's on everyone's mind these days, our economy. Whether you're feeling the pinch at the gas pump, watching your grocery bills climb, or just trying to make sense of the headlines, you know things are shifting. What if I told you there's a no-nonsense resource that's cutting through the noise and giving you the straight facts? That's right. I'm talking about the Economic Collapse Report with me. Whether the American economy thrives into the future or takes a downturn, one thing seems clear. The fiat and debt-based economy driving the United States and the world will eventually collapse. Not because it can't be fixed, but because the powers that be seem bent on collapsing it. In the Economic Collapse Report podcast, which you're listening to right now, we don't aim to be fearmongers or chicken littles. No, we're here to bring the truth about the economy to light and make sure you're prepared for what's coming. We're not financial advisors, and we don't give financial advice, just real talk. Expert insights and the information you need to stay ahead. If you're hearing this right now, you're already in the right place. Just hit subscribe. to the Economic Collapse Report podcast, wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, whatever. Whatever your favorite platform is, just hit the subscribe button and you're good to go. New episodes drop regularly, packed with analysis on inflation, market crashes, globalist agendas, and how it affects you and your family. But we don't stop at the podcast. You can also head over to our news site, economiccollapse.report. That's economiccollapse.report. Don't type in a .com or anything like that. economiccollapse.report. This is your go-to hub for in-depth articles, breaking news, and all the latest episodes. We're posting fresh content daily, diving deep into the economic battles we're facing, from central bank manipulation to supply chain breakdowns. It's all there, easy to read and share. And to keep you locked in and ready to fight back against the globalists, sign up for our email newsletter at economiccollapse.substack.com. You'll get exclusive updates, alerts on major economic shifts, and tips on how to protect yourself and your loved ones. No spam, just the truth delivered straight to your inbox, because the more you know, the easier it will be to prepare. And I can tell you this, even if you have all the knowledge, it's not going to be easy, but it's also not going to be impossible. After all, we do have God on our side, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to sit here and preach prosperity and say, oh my gosh, if you just do this, then you'll be fine. No, folks, that's not how it works. Don't even get me started right now on the prosperity gospel. Such a bad thing. I digress. Don't wait for the next big shakeup. Subscribe to the podcast today. Bookmark the website, economiccollapse.report, and join the newsletter. It's free at economiccollapse.substack.com. Together, we're shining a light on the economic collapse and arming ourselves for the future. This is J.D. Rucker with the Economic Collapse Report. Let's stay informed and stay strong together. May God bless and protect us all. The insurance you need to protect your American dream. That's the tagline for my great friends over at America First Healthcare. You can find out more for yourself. You can reach them by going to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health. Check them out, see what they offer, whether it's for health, for life, for business insurance. They do a fantastic job. But that's just me saying it. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them through that link. Talk to them and see what they can do for you. Because look, we can say, oh great, it's awesome, they're America First company and blah 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 blah. They have their shared values and all that. That's great, right? It really is. But is it better? I mean, we're not going to be getting worse coverage just because we can. They might give us worse coverage, but by golly, they promote America. That's just not going to happen. We are practical people, my audience here at Patriot TV. But with that said, they claim, and I would encourage you to research it, but they claim they actually have better coverage than what you get through the government-controlled healthcare systems or even many of the private healthcare offerings out there. And more importantly, perhaps for some of you, they offer better rates with, according to their website, with thousands of insurance plans to choose from. It can feel overwhelming to find the right plan at the right price. At America First Healthcare, we take a holistic approach to make sure we find the best coverage for your exact needs. We get you better rates by helping you choose the right type and amount of coverage. Then we shop around for the best results. They can save you up to 20% on the coverage. Who couldn't use? I know we're most of us, the vast majority of us, are paying. I mean, compared to what we used to pay, my goodness, we're paying a lot. 20% right off the top. That would be a huge benefit. So reach out to my good friends over at America First Healthcare. Go to patriot.tv/health. Patriot.tv/health. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has set the stage for the Save America Act to collapse as the uniparty swamps finger-pointing status quo wins the day, and absolutely zero Americans who've been paying any attention are surprised by this at all. Some of us may have had hope that, oh, you know what, they're going to fight, and President Trump has laid down the ultimatum that he's not going to sign any more deals until that deal's done. And some people are sort of coming over and, hey, we got our 50 votes, and Thune. No, we shouldn't have fallen for it again. And I'm sure many of you did not. I'm sure that most of you perhaps were just like, you know what, it's not going to happen. Maybe I'm just too hopeful. Maybe I just want things to be good within the Republican Party. And I'm not the party itself per se, but just the feckless GOP on Capitol Hill, in particular in the Senate. They just prove time and time again to be horrible. It doesn't matter how many people we bring in. If we get good ones, there's always going to be more bad ones. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, Eeyore, oh bother, sky is falling. But I'm frustrated. It pisses me off. It really does. We've got this article over at AmericaFirstReport.com. You can check it out. I'm not going to read you the article, but I will go over some of the bullet points. Senate Majority Leader John Thune announced he will bring the Save America Act to the Senate floor next week for debate and a vote, but he has ruled out changes to Senate rules that could allow passage with a simple majority. The bill, strongly endorsed by President Trump and a strong majority of Americans, requires proof of U.S. citizenship for voter registration and photo ID to cast a ballot. House Republicans passed the legislation last month in a nearly party line vote with only one Democrat crossing over in support. Thune insists the goal is to force Democrats onto the record opposing these popular election integrity provisions, even as he acknowledges the bill faces certain defeat under current filibuster rules requiring 60 votes to advance. Now, about that, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, who cares if they get on record?" And actually, it does make a difference to some extent, but only if they are able to handle it right. And there's no evidence that the RNC or the Senate, McConnell's Senate Victory Fund or whatever it's called, or anyone is going to handle it right, who's going to take advantage of, the potential PR and electoral benefits of saying, here's a bill, and Democrats voted in unison against it. We need a stronger majority in the Senate in order to get this common sense, widely approved legislation through. This was the playbook that they used to be pretty good at, and I would argue that being pretty good at it wasn't necessarily their skill. It was the fact that they were doing it with Obamacare. Of course, I'm talking about the Tea Party days. I'm talking about the times when they were able to continuously hammer with Obamacare all the way through to the 2016 victory. And one can argue that President Trump, in his first win, did ride some of the way from the Tea Party pushing against Obamacare. And I'm not trying to give any credit or props to Paul Ryan or John Boehner or any of those guys that were around at that time. Of course, Mitch McConnell. I'm just saying that at least they had something and they were able to do something with the pushback from the Democrats. It helped them to win majorities. Well, this is a different scenario. They already have the majority. And with the majority on a bill so popular amongst the people, and they still can't get it done, I just have no confidence that they're going to handle it right. So whether, normally I would not agree with Thune, but at least understand what he's doing in this case, it's just a matter of him saying, look, at least I got them on record. Hey, that's something. It's nothing. He'll fumble it. Back to the article. Trump has made the bill his top priority, threatening to withhold approval on other legislation until it reaches his desk in strong form, and has publicly pressed Thune to show leadership by pushing harder. Critics within the Republican base view Thune's approach as calculated theater, a symbolic vote that lets establishment Republicans claim effort while ensuring the status quo remains protected from real change. And let's be clear about that, because it's not just that Democrats are opposed to it. There are Republicans in the Senate who are opposed to it. They won't come out publicly as being opposed to it, because then they'll be labeled in the same vein as like the Lisa Murkowski's or Mitch McConnell's or Susan Collins's of the world, or Tom Tillis. You've got Rand Paul, who he stands separate from them. People don't look at him necessarily as a rhino. If anything, he's just, I don't know, he's a showboat. They would say he's too principled, too libertarian, too this, too that, but definitely not a rhino. But who knows? I don't care. And at this point, I just don't care. The point I'm trying to make, those in this regard, is that there are other Republicans who are, they're breathing a sigh of relief. And I would say John Thune is probably one of them. John Thune is definitely one of them. John Thune does not want this to pass. You have to understand the vast majority of people that are involved in election fraud, in voter fraud, in condemning election integrity. The vast majority of them are Democrats, but there are still many Republicans, a good chunk, maybe 15% of those who have some sort of power, whether through the bureaucracy or through elected office or through whatever. They are able to do more with this without the protections of the Save America Act. And for some of them, I would say, especially when you're looking at secretaries of state that are Republicans, in red states, blue states, doesn't matter. If you've got a Republican Secretary of State or various election officials, a lot of them are rooting against them because they get paid. I've got some names in mind. I'm not going to drop any names because I'm accusing somebody of a crime in this case. But there are people, Republicans, who are just fine with having the payday and, yes, helping Democrats win elections behind the scenes. Thus is the extent that we can see, and it's much greater than that, the extent of voter fraud here in the United States of America. Thune, back to the article. Thune has repeatedly stated that Senate Republicans lack the votes to eliminate or bypass the filibuster, whether through a talking filibuster or outright rule changes, citing potential long-term consequences. The Save America Act addresses concerns over non-citizens and election security, issues that have failed or fueled distrust in the system since at least 2020. And yes, it does go back beyond that. But 2020 and then 2022, those are the 2 years. Everybody talks about 2020. I would argue that 2022 is another banner year for voter fraud. And if you recall, that was when there was supposed to be a red tsunami, right? And it just didn't materialize. And all of the mainstream Republicans and the journalists, the quote-unquote conservative journalists, were like, oh, it's because of Roe v. Wade. It's because of abortion. Republicans leaned in too much on that. And I'm like, that is patently false. Not just because I disagree with the notion, but the facts. The facts were very clear in 2020. The polls leading up to the midterm election, to the 2020 election, the 2022 election, all of the polls showed massive wins for the Republicans. And we're talking polls that many of them were taken in the days just before Election Day. So if it was Roe v. Wade, if it was abortion that prevented the red wave, here's what would have had to have happened. Millions of Americans would have had to wake up on Election Day, and they would have had to say, you know what? I know that I polled positively that I was going to vote Republican, but I just found out today on Election Day that Roe v. Wade had been overturned, or the Republicans were pushing for abortion, anti-abortion laws, and that's going to change my perspective, and I'm going to vote differently from what I told the pollster yesterday. And there would have to have been, of course, millions of people who were oblivious before the polls about Roe v. Wade, but then learned on Election Day that abortion was an important issue during the election. So if you do have any of your pundits out there, your conservative talking heads that they're just so scared to, at least a lot more are talking about it now, but back then they were just so scared to talk about voter fraud because it might get them kicked off of Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or whatever, or they just didn't want to sound like, oh, crazy like that Rucker guy. I don't know what their reasoning was, but it was pure gaslighting for them to say that it was because of abortion, because again, the polls showed very clear, and polls always favor Democrats. So it should have been a red tsunami. There was massive widespread voter fraud in 2022. Obviously not to the extent, or at least the impact of the 2020 election, which is why everybody focuses on that. Bottom line is we need the SAVE Act. And before anybody jumps in there, well, what about 2024? I would argue that, yes, it did happen in 2024. It was just a lot more selective. They only picked certain races to go after. And those races were the ones that did have consequence, but they didn't think that they would be able to overcome the presidential election, obviously. And we saw the results of that without as much voter fraud. We had President Trump had a clean sweep. Won every battleground state, won the popular vote. That's because it's not that Joe Biden was, Mr. 81 million vote man. Well, since he was off the ticket, all of a sudden Democrats just went home or loved Trump. It was that they didn't try to manufacture the millions of votes that they manufactured for Joe Biden in 2020. They would have if it was closer. They just saw the polls too, and they're like, man, we'd really have to stick our necks out for this. We're kind of stuck. Trump's going to win. So let's focus on minimizing the Republican gains in the House or the Senate. Let's minimize, reducing their majorities in the House and the Senate. Let's focus on local elections as well. And that's exactly what happened in 2024. So yes, there was voter fraud there as well. And this is why the Save America Act is so important. And this is why I've now done, 5 or 6 shows just this week about it? I mean, many of you, I'm sure, are sick of hearing about it. But we can't be sick of hearing about it because we're so close. We really are. This isn't about getting more votes. This is about forcing 2 things to happen. Number 1, you have to get the Republicans, who are now currently opposed to one or both. Okay, they have to agree, in the Republicans in the Senate, at least 50 of them, have to agree to either or to both wanting the Save America Act to pass, and 2, wanting to remove the filibuster. Thune is right. The talking filibuster almost certainly won't work. It should work. If they weren't so lazy, it would work. But they, and I would say the Republicans in the Senate, but I would argue it's probably the entirety of the Senate. Not every single person. I'm saying that both Democrats and Republicans, 70, 80, 90% of them, whatever, they don't want to go to the Senate to work. They don't want to have to be there 7 days a week. They don't want to have to be there for 10, 12, 15 hours a day. They don't want to have to sacrifice anything at all for the American people. They want to work bankers' hours, 3 or 4 days a week, maybe. Take long vacations. Fly back home, fly wherever they want on taxpayer dimes often. It shouldn't be pleasant to be a U.S. Senator. It should be safe, okay? They do need protection. But as far as getting rich off this stuff, give me a break. As far as, not having to work very hard and be there to defend the act against amendments, this is, again, as I've said many times, somewhere between 70 and 85% of Americans, depending upon the poll you read, agree that voter fraud is an issue and the voter ID is an acceptable solution. Many Democrats, vast majority of independents, nearly every Republican agrees with those truths. This is the one that they fight for. This is the one that they should say, you know what? We go all out. The American people want it. We're so damn close. So let's just finish the job. Let's do whatever it takes to get this to pass. And if that means pulling aside all of the naysayers to both, all the Republican naysayers, to both removing the filibuster as well as passing the Save America Act, getting at least 50 votes there and 50 votes on removing the filibuster. So all you need is 50. J.D. Vance can be 51. Done deal. And don't forget, it's not legislation that's needed to remove the filibuster. It's a rule change. That's it. It's a rule change. There's no filibuster in the Constitution. There's no law regarding the filibuster. This is just a Senate rule, and it can be changed with a simple majority. Democrats already tried, don't forget. Democrats already tried to remove the filibuster when they had a majority. And praise God that Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin neither of them would play ball. If one of them had played ball, then the filibuster would already be gone. And guess what? If the Democrats get control, whether they get control of the Senate in 2026 or 2028 or 2030 or next time they get control, they will remove the filibuster. Done deal. 99% certain that that's exactly what will happen. That is my only, I guess, justification, because I like the filibuster. I think the filibuster makes sense. I really do. I like the filibuster because it does prevent tyranny of the majority. It makes it to where they have to at least try to reach across the aisle in order to get most legislation passed. Well, because the Democrats are going to get rid of it, and because we need the Save America Act to pass, we need the government opened up, we need other things. We need to completely eliminate stock trading for sitting members of Congress. We need to eliminate cush jobs. Again, I go back to this, I can say this 100 times, and it won't be enough. Being a member of Congress or the Senate should be felt and should represent a duty, an honor, and also a burden. It should be a hard-ass job. And you shouldn't be coming out of it richer than you were when you got into it. And you shouldn't be happy with your job. You shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, this job is great. It should suck. It really should, because you should be working your butt off figuring out. I guarantee you this, and I'm 99% sure, I don't want to say never, but I'm 99% sure that I will never run for office. Okay? But I promise, I know, and this isn't about me. This isn't like, I'm not trying to brag here about a hypothetical that'll never happen. But I work my butt off on Patriot TV, on Discern Media, on everything that I do. And I've been working my butt off for years. I put in the time. I put in the effort. I guarantee you I put in much more time and effort with my meaningless position as a podcaster, basically. I put in more time and effort into that than the average senator does with their job, or the average congressman does with their job. It's a country club. But I guarantee you that if I were ever to run for office, if I were ever to get into office, people would think I was a freak for working as hard as I did. Again, I'm not trying to brag here. Again, I want to be clear. It's about a mentality, okay? The mindset should be that life is short, that we are here for a reason. God put us here to do stuff. And I guarantee you, it's not to go play golf. And I'm not ripping on you if you play golf. And it's not to play Roblox. And I will I'll rip on you if you play Roblox or Minecraft or Call of Duty. I don't even know what games they're playing nowadays. Okay? And it's not to sit there and watch Netflix for hours a day. These people of authority should be willing to work at least 10-hour days, 6 days a week, I would say. That should be I'm not saying they have to do that all the time. I'm saying they should be willing to work. Hey, we got a filibuster. We got to fight it. We got to defend it. Everybody's going to be on shift. Everybody's going to be on call. All hands on deck. Cancel all your travel plans. You got a vacation. Don't do it. That's what happens in the real world, by the way, when there's like emergencies or scenarios. It's not like, oh, well, partial government shutdown. I guess we should go on a vacation. That's what they do in Congress. It's getting to the point where I'm really despising these people. I'm going off on tangents. That's how bad it is. What needs to happen is this. The caucus needs to get together. Thune needs to show real leadership. If President Trump has to step in and say, this is what I want to do. I want to rally every Republican in the Senate. I want to have a meeting. Bring them all to the White House or Mar-a-Lago or wherever. It's a Senate meeting room. I don't care. Take them to a skiff. Take them to the Pentagon. Take them somewhere. Get them all in a room. Tell them what has to happen. And tell them, we have two options here. Once assuming that we can get to the 50 number on the Save America Act, which we're technically at now, that means that we have to get to the 50 number on the filibuster, one way or the other. Now, option one, if you all want a real filibuster, you want to keep the rule, but you want the quote-unquote talking filibuster, that means that everybody here, every Republican senator, is going to have to get on shifts because it's going to be a 24/7 ordeal in the Senate. Everybody's going to have their own shifts, then you have to be the ones that make sure that hideous amendments aren't added to the bill. Because you can't just okay, they're filibustering, we're going to go take off, let us know when they're done. Because that's not how filibusters work. They can do a lot of things in the middle of a filibuster pertaining to the bill that's being filibustered. And that means adding amendments. And they can add amendments that would kill the bill. So Republicans have to be there. They can't just say, oh, filibuster's going, wake me up when it's done. They have to get together and work in shifts, 24-hour shifts, okay? So whether that's 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever, and they have to do this until it's done. And it could take weeks or months. That's option one. Option two, get rid of the filibuster. Still need 50 votes, plus J.D. Vance. And I say go with that option. I don't want the talking filibuster because it would lock down the Senate for an extended period of time. Just get rid of the filibuster. Again, it's not constitutional, and the Democrats are going to get rid of it themselves anyway at the next available opportunity. And if you don't pass the Save America Act, the next available opportunity is probably 2026. So starting January 2027, Democrats will have control of the Senate, and they will then get rid of the filibuster. And then people like me will be going on there saying that John Thune is a disgusting human being, saying that Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski are they're not Republicans. They're anti-American. They should be thoroughly investigated, because I would argue that the only way they could be that hateful, that anti-Republican, and still be on the Republican Party is if there's some variation of corruption involved with them. Find the crime. Tom Tillis will be gone, so for him, I would investigate anyway, figure out what it was. But again, I'm getting dark here, assuming the worst. Just get it passed. Remove the filibuster, and it can be done. And you have valid reasons, and you have the support of the people. There's no reason not to. There really isn't. If the Democrats weren't certainly going to do it, then I wouldn't want to remove it either. I would say figure it out or do the talking filibuster. But because we know that they will, they've already tried. Filibuster would be gone if either Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin had been gotten to, but they weren't. Praise God for that. So, I know I'm ranting. I'm repeating myself. This is how important it is, though, folks. It really is important enough for me to rant. For me, I don't like ranting, just to be clear. I want to be very much more of a super awesome, constructive podcaster. That really is what I would love to happen. And I will do that very soon, hopefully, Lord willing. I want to focus on my Bible. I want to talk to you about about biblical aspects of government, of culture. I mean, that's really what the show's supposed to be about. Unfortunately, in this scenario, I'm not going to turn to my Bible for answers. I can't. I already have. I mean, I shouldn't say I can't. I could. But I want to be angry about this. And that's a sin. I'm acknowledging that up front. I should not want to be angry about this. I should want to forgive them and find alternatives. I should be seeking solutions. But it just chaps my khakis so badly that Thune is, number one, that he's in the position in the first place. Number two, that so many people, so many Americans, so many conservatives, so many Republicans are going to sit there and think, oh, well, he tried. At least he got them on record. At least we're doing the best he can. No, he's not. They're not. The feckless GOP is awful, especially in the Senate. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Mike Johnson either. I think that considering his predecessors, he's fantastic. To be clear, he is much better than Kevin McCarthy, Paul Ryan, John Boehner. Just go down the list of his predecessors, and on the Republican side. And yeah, no, he's great. But at least he was able to get this passed, even with a razor-thin majority. Grant, again, we are just talking about half the chamber versus, you need at least half to get the filibuster removed and then half to vote for the Save America Act and to reopen the government and to do a whole bunch of other things. So do it. This isn't about John Thune demonstrating whether or not he's a good leader, because he's not. This is a question of, is John Thune an American? I'm not talking about his citizenship status. I'm talking about his need and desire to defend the Constitution. Because without that, I don't think that he should be Senate Majority Leader. I don't think that he is even a true American, considering the position that he's in. It is illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections in the United States of America. That's already established. The Save America Act simply puts into place methods through which voter fraud, illegal voting, can be mitigated and even stopped. The American people want it. The entirety of the Republican Party wants it. John Thune has the ability to make it happen. Get the naysayers in a room. Bring in Trump. Bring in Vance. Bring in Rubio. Bring in whoever. Talk through it. Find out what their objections are. Bribe them if you have to. And I'm not talking about illegal bribes. I'm saying, look, fine. It will add to the Save America Act or separate legislation. We'll get your whatever stuff happening in Maine. Whatever pet project. I hate doing that, but do something. Do something to get Susan Collins to make the right move. Do something for Alaska, for Lisa Murkowski. You won't be able to sway. You won't get Rand Paul. You might be able to get Tom Tillis if you offer him his golden parachute after the fact. But point is that John Thune has an opportunity. President Trump will do whatever is necessary to help him. Get it done. That's it. I wish we could do something about it. We can't. We have to pray. We have to hope that John Thune does the right thing. I know chances are slim. But stranger things have happened, and this is why we pray for it.